All right, y'all. So we're just gonna wait a few minutes for the panelists to get in here and some others to join us.
Hi, Bruno and Elaine. How are you guys doing?
Hey, Tess.
Hi, Tess. How are you?
It's the pre-meeting entertainment. You guys ordered it, right?
They're looking at me.
They are.
So if everybody could put behind their names the country that they served in, that would be super cool so that we know where everyone is serving. Or if you're interested, if you could just put like an aspiring Peace Corps volunteer behind your name, that'd be awesome. So, oh no.
So I've been doing Zoom for as long as we all have, but I can't change my name right now.
Maybe it's my settings. That's my bad.
Okay,
Let's
okay.
not do that and say we did, right? All right, so we're gonna get started tonight, y'all. More people are gonna trickle in. That's awesome. That's fine. Thank you all for coming to the third panel. This is the third of our series of diversity panels, the LGBTQIA plus community. Just a quick few announcements that if you could mute your cameras and yourselves so we don't hear you, we don't want to take any attention away from the panelists. Corby, Selena, you can turn your camera on. So Selena and Nisha are our panelists tonight. And so just a quick few announcements. I'm going to be putting a link in the chat for our fiscal sponsors. Local to Global Justice here in Arizona is the official financial sponsor for us, and we will be making donations to our panelists tonight. So if you can make a donation to them, you don't have to, but if you could, it'd be greatly appreciated so that we can support all three of our amazing volunteers this evening. Also, this is a safe and brave space, so anything that the panelists say, they are saying it because they feel that they are protected at all times. If anything is countering that, you will be removed from the panel. There's no questions about that. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Bruno, our moderator, so he can get it started.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you, Lane, for the introduction. My name is Bruno Estrada. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to this amazing panel that we have for you tonight. I'm very excited. It's a aplatanao version of all this stuff. So we have a lot of folks that served. We have all three of us served in the Dominican Republic, pretty much kind of overlapping, which is beautiful to see the evolution that we've all had as humans in our personal and in our careers and all that stuff. So again, I want to thank you all for being here, especially to my fellow PCDR folks. I see you. I see the message in the back for y'all as well. But all of you who didn't serve in the DR, welcome as well. And folks who are aspiring, I want to welcome you. But I don't want to take too much attention. I want to make sure that we acknowledge the land that we are on right now, that it is not U.S. property. It is stolen, obviously, in accordance to so many other things in history. But I want to acknowledge that. I want to make sure that we know that there are a lot of folks that are still hurting from this, and that we have the privilege of being here right now and enjoying from it. And hopefully we can restore justice to that. I also want to take a moment of silence before I introduce our two panelists for the families who have lost family members to domestic violence and other forms of toxic masculinity, and to those trans women who have lost their lives, and our queer siblings who have been taken so soon because of hatred and fear. So we're going to take about 30 seconds. 30 seconds is never enough, but I just want to make sure that we acknowledge these folks. And with that, I want to introduce one of my favorite people to serve along with. Her name is Dominica Newton, and I will let her say a little bit more about herself.
Hello, everybody. Dominica or Nisha. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I served in the Dominican Republic in 2015 to 17. That seems like a really long time ago. I'm really happy I get to see some familiar faces on here. I haven't seen so many people in so long. So this is really uplifting. And shoot, I'm happy to be invited to talk about my experience with the Peace Corps.
Thank you so much, Nisha. We appreciate you being here with us, and excited to hear your answers to these questions. All right, and our final panelist for tonight is Selena Dagnino, aka my soul puppy. And I'm gonna let her speak a little bit more about herself.
Okay, so I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. I went to Arizona State. I think there's a lot of Sun Devils in here. I served in Dominican Republic in, 2015 I left? Damn, so you gotta subtract 2. So from the 5, you subtract the 2 and it's a 3. So 2013 to 2015, I was in DR, yeah. She, hers? Pa que sepan.
Thank you very much. And so I want to start by directing our first question to Nisha. And our first question is, do you feel like Peace Corps created an open and safe pre-service environment?
So I would answer that question by saying, I think Peace Corps tried to create a safe and open environment for their volunteers, but did not, I would not say they exceeded in most cases. For me personally, as a cis presenting female in most cases, I wasn't at risk as some other volunteers, but my answer would be, I think in their eyes they tried, but did not succeed.
Got you. Thank you so much. And just before we continue, and I ask the same question to Selena, I just want to remind everybody to please mute your microphones. But the panelists, please make sure you keep them hot. So Selena, same question for you. Do you feel like Peace Corps created an open, safe environment during pre-service?
I would say absolutely. The thing is, I transitioned after Peace Corps, so I was still very like cis presenting, and when I walked in the streets in DR, I didn't have the same experience as like walking through DR now, which is the Bronx. That's where I live. So I feel like I had a very different experience, but I feel like they did what they had to do to keep us safe, to keep us informed. And a lot of times, like, they were real. So even in my pre-service, they would be like, you probably are not going to be able to come out in your service. And at this time I was presenting as a gay man, and I got there, you know, being like super liberal. I went to like Arizona State University, where like we use pronouns and this and this and that, and it's like, oh, we're all woke. And I like, oh, I'm gonna go to my site and I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna be that person that like changes everything. Girl, bye. So they told me, they're like, you know, you're probably not gonna be able to come out. And I kind of read them down. I was like, oh, y'all being ignorant, this and this and that. And no, they weren't. They were being real, because in my service, I could not come out. I could not come out. I worked in a school. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, they would think I'm a rapist. Like, that's how it was. So I did not come out in my 2 years of being in service. And I feel like it was because of the pre-service training, where they were real with us. They were like, just so you know, if you dress a certain way, they're going to call you certain things. And it's no shade. It's like, you know, I don't like to be victim blaming or nothing, but it's like, I feel like in the States sometimes we're like in this like safe little bubble where we're like, oh, I can wear this. And like, you know, if you say something, that's on you. No, like sometimes your life could really be in danger. So I feel like Peace Corps did what they had to do. They gave us a dress code. They told us how to talk. They gave us Spanish classes, how to talk, what words to use, what words to not use, how to act in the streets, how to not act in the streets. They did a good job, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
is there time to elaborate or to go further? When I think about that question, like, I definitely agree with Selena that Peace Corps was really good on keeping their volunteers physically safe, and making sure that they were in a position to where they could do their project in the town that they were placed in. But then also there's another component of safety, your spiritual safety, your inner security that was not in the forefront of Peace Corps' priority in a lot of ways. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
No, thank you very much. Thank you to both of you for those answers. Our next question is, during service, did you feel, so we talked about pre-service before you actually got sworn in as a Peace Corps volunteer. So now during service, did you feel like you had that support from Peace Corps? Did you feel like they provided, you know, any more guidance, or maybe, you know, reviewed some of those things that you had brought up before with you? You know, what, if anything, you want to share? And this time we're going to start with Selena.
Wait, say the question again.
So we talked about pre-service, right? So now we're talking about during service. Do you feel like they supported you during service for any one of those things that you may have brought up to them?
Absolutely. So I think they were very good about safety, period. You're right. If like they kind of see that you might not do well on a site, they're not going to put you in that site. They're going to put you in a different site. They might put you in a bigger city. They might put you in a place that's a little bit more open. They might put you with a partner, a project partner that's going to look out for you. They do this stuff on, like, everything was so well thought out and pieced together. And I feel like the Peace Corps gets criticized so much that they're always like, kind of like, okay. And anybody that had any safety issues ever, bitch, they asked me where to park a helicopter if I needed it. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I've really felt that if I did not feel safe, I could call anybody at any time and get out. So I think that they did a good job during service. And you know, your emotional safety and well-being is very important too, as your physical. So I felt like, you know, the friends that we made, there was support groups, there was this, they even offered a therapist. Like, they would literally pay for your stay to see a therapist. Like, girl, they did what they could on their ends, on what they, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got you. Thank you so much. Nisha.
I would say my safety was not at risk, or I never had any close encounters to see how Peace Corps would have responded. I would say I felt extremely safe in my site. I was in a very small mountain community. There was one way in, one way out. And I lived really close to like my host family. So the family that I was required to live with for a certain amount of time. And I depended on them more so than Peace Corps for my safety, because they were the people that were close to me. If I needed Peace Corps, I don't know how the hell they would have gotten to me in a timely manner. So I I definitely was not relying on them. But who knows? They maybe would have came through if I needed them with that helicopter. I do know we did have to let them know like where would be the best place to land.
Okay.
Like where would be the best place to land a helicopter. And I was in the mountains, so I was like, I would have to walk like at least like a half a mile to get to the helicopter. So hopefully I could make it. But yeah, I definitely relied on the people in my community to help me feel safe.
Yeah. Well, thank you, both of you, for answering that question. And yeah, I think it's very important to know, you know, how you felt during those times before service and then during service. Obviously, like we're constantly evolving during our service. And so, you know, it's been a while since we may have thought about some of these things, but it's important to reflect because it can help not just us grow, but specifically a program that's still going on to this day, even though they don't necessarily have volunteers right now. And so our next question is more, I guess I would say, tailored to you, not just to you and Peace Corps. But our question is, when did you feel most empowered with your identity during your service?
Should I go first?
And sorry, we're gonna go in.
Yeah, I would say I felt most empowered in my identity, my sexual identity. I don't know if that's where the question was going, but I'm assuming. But with my fellow volunteers, like when I was around the volunteers, like I felt like I could be truly me because like I was witnessing people being very fluid, being very open with who they were. And before Peace Corps, I was closeted. Like I did not identify as queer. I wouldn't say it out loud. But in Peace Corps, like I felt like I could do that when I was around the Peace Corps volunteers, specifically. And then also like I had like a couple close friends that were like coming out during that time too. So that definitely empowered me and made me feel confident and safe that I could do that as well. And then also I openly dated the first woman in Peace Corps. So that also helped me like leaving Peace Corps with that relationship and being like, I was able to be very open with my fellow volunteers and to like come back to the States and like still hold on to that and like have that confidence of like, hell, I am queer, I'm dating this woman, and just like, I felt like I was like reintroducing myself to like who knew me after like gaining that momentum in the Peace Corps.
Awesome.
I was very closeted in my community though, I will say that. I was not the lesbian Nisha. I was going to marry a man someday. Maybe it was Fulano that I was gonna marry. But yeah.
Oh my God, Peace Corps us.
Yeah, we definitely change. But yeah, and also adding to that piece, Nisha, when you asked if it was specifically about your sexuality, I don't always want to limit the question. I know this is a panel that includes sexuality, but we are intersectional, and so however you want to define your intersections, right, of your identity and answer these questions, everything is very much welcome. But thank you again so much.
Yeah.
Selena, now the same question for you. When did you feel most empowered with your identity during service?
So I mean, I had a different identity in service. So I always wanted to transition since I was little. Since forever, I wanted to transition. But like as I started growing, my facial hair started getting really big. My muscles started getting bigger. Like my physical features were not giving transition because I didn't know how to transition. So I just like thought like, oh, if you're just born looking this way, like that's it. So I feel like I tried my very best to like be a gay man and like live my best life and like look as great as I could, but I was never internally satisfied or happy. So I had I had a different experience than what I would have if I would have gone looking like this. But I would say a lot of things empowered me actually because I'm from Arizona. And Arizona is like a backward ass state, like backward ass everything. Like I'm from Phoenix. At least that was somewhat normal, kind of. But I didn't grow up with no trans people ever. Like the only trans person I knew was like one trans man, and our experiences were just different. So I'm like, I don't know how to transition. I don't know what that is. And then all of a sudden I'm graduating college, and all of a sudden I'm going to Peace Corps, and like, everything was just very fast. And so I didn't really have a lot of time to be empowered in that identity yet. When I went to DR, I got paired with a project partner, and then kind of like another project partner who was obviously, like, you could tell from the aesthetic, gay. I guess like when you can't tell someone's gay, that's called like realness. So I would have more realness. So I would go outside and nobody would say anything to me because I had more realness than my project partner. You could clock him like this. So I remember walking in the street with him in my sight, and everybody just talking shit about him just everywhere, like people yelling at like through the windows, like just screaming at him, calling him pájaro, faggot, maricón, que no sé qué, no sé qué, all the way like 17 streets. And I was like, oh my god, I felt like I needed to apologize because it's like my site, even though like he's from there. I was like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. He's like, oh, it happens to me all the time. And I'm like, you just like live with that harassment every single day? He's like, yeah. Like, well, what am I gonna do, stop being myself? And I was like, oh shit. And so I feel like that was like the first component of like, oh shit. And then fast forward to like meeting Dominican friends. So a lot of Peace Corps volunteers just like hung out with Peace Corps people. I wasn't like that. Like I had actual Dominican friends. I speak 10 out of 10 Spanish. So I was like intermingling with like fucking everyone on the island. And everybody that I met, because transitioning is a very expensive, like transitioning is so expensive. This hair is expensive, like procedures are, everything's so much money. So I'm meeting people who are broke and they're like transitioning, but when you transition in the States, for example, or like a place with money, like you could get procedures done so that when you're on the streets, you don't get harassed like that. In DR, not a lot of people had that. So I was meeting a lot of trans people who were super clockable and getting harassed nasty. And they was just living their life. And they're like, what am I going to do? Like, I have a right to exist too. And I'm just like, oh my God. That's why I feel like I did nothing in Peace Corps, but like they inspired me. I feel like I didn't do nothing but be inspired by these people. And I'm just like, so it's like meeting all these people. And then they will always have clapbacks after a while. I'm at the point right now where I do feel like, you know, when people say something to me in the streets, you know, I will cower away. But I'm trying to like channel that strength that these people had, which I don't want to like glorify trauma because that's like where it comes from basically. But like, it was just like these people would have these clapbacks right back. And I'm just like, oh my God, like you just said that to him. Like, what if you got to fight down? They're like, then let's go. And I'm like, what? So yeah, I would say I felt most empowered by the queer community in DR around me. Because they were just so like unapologetic. They were just like, times have got to change. What am I gonna do? Stop existing? And I remember going to one of my friend's house. His name's Carlos, and he put on RuPaul's Drag Race, and I'd never seen RuPaul's Drag Race before. And I was gagging, and we was just like a group of Dominicans and me there, and I was like, oh my God, maybe and I started doing drag first before I transitioned. I was like, oh my God, maybe I could do drags. Maybe that's the way that I could still, you know, be myself and, you know, whatever. And so he played RuPaul's Drag Race, and we all kikied about that. And then he ended up starting drag balls in DR, which is like fucking amazing. So like, you know, once a quarter or whatever, he throws like a big party for drag. And I thought that was so fucking amazing. And sorry, I'm like talking way too much, but essentially the people of DR being so fucking resilient and so unapologetic and just so fucking strong, just like gave me the courage to be like, yo, fuck all this stuff. And yeah, next question.
No, thank you so much. You don't have to like stop your train of thought either. We do have a good amount of time budgeted for both all the rants that you want to go on.
Rants.
Speak. Sorry.
I said work rants.
Exactly. But we're here for it. We're here to hear what you both have to say, and you don't have to limit your time.
Wow.
But thank you. That's great to hear. Of when you felt empowered, and you can see those two different perspectives. Where Dominisha felt a little bit more comfortable with Peace Corps volunteers, and you felt a little bit more comfortable with other queer Dominicans. And there's a both and here, which I appreciate a lot. And I want to thank you both again. So next question is, and we are going to start with Nisha. How did Peace Corps inform you and guide you through being open about? Sorry, the question is, I have to rephrase this question. How did the Peace Corps inform you and guide you about being open about your sexuality during your service and putting your safety needs first? So I feel like we touched this a little bit, but maybe if you feel the opportunity, the possibility to dig a little bit deeper and to see those connections that you may have made with folks within the organization, whether they be medical staff or whether they be program directors, et cetera, et cetera. How did you feel like they guided you and informed you about possibly being open about your sexuality? Nisha.
Yeah. So I'm like trying to think. So to be honest, and it's been a minute, I can't think of a particular scenario where I was open about my sexuality with like the staff at Peace Corps. Minus like one medical, like where I was talking to a doctor and it came up, but I would not say that particular incident made me. What was the question? Like, how did they
like guide you or support you during?
That moment didn't like foster any guidance related to sexuality. So I'm sorry. Like my experience, I feel like I can't really speak to that particular question.
Yeah. And is it, if I can follow up before we pass the question over to Selena, and if I could follow up with, did you feel comfortable with Peace Corps staff, like with you being open about your sexuality with a Peace Corps staff? Was there a point in that relationship, kind of like employee with the employer in a sense, where you felt, not necessarily empowered, but maybe the comfortable enough to share this with a staff person?
Yeah, so I would say the Peace Corps staff that I worked with closely, so our, what do they call those people? Like our
the program managers, or
exactly, that person. So with my program managers, yes, I felt very comfortable. Like if I needed to talk about an incident or to like get advice for anything that's related to my sexuality, like I felt 100% comfortable going to those specific people about that.
Got you. But it was maybe like a choice and then a personal journey that you might, have tried to avoid having these conversations. But I don't know if that may be your truth or not. I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think there was definitely moments of discomfort thinking about like having to talk about it for whatever reason. But I would say for me personally, as like a female, like I don't think that I like my discomfort of like talking to someone about something was that huge for me personally, or at least I didn't have any experiences that that would make me feel that way. I'm sorry, I butchered that question. Selena, what do you got to
I
say?
it's like the
No,
first question, like
it
what
is
did they?
all-
I feel like it's the
um,
same. So like,
yeah. Mhm.
yeah, they informed me, guided me, told me real things. They would think I'm a molester, which is true. And I was, you know, offended at first. And I'm like, what? You tried it, but it's true. And I think they did a really good job with like giving you people on the island that could give you better advice than they could. So instead of them like making shit up, like they would tell you, oh, reach out to this person who's Dominican, and they would guide us. So yeah, I don't know. Next question.
No, no, that's perfect. Thank you. And like I said, there's no like right or wrong answer. You know, like we're just trying to see what all the possibilities were, and if you feel like you know things you know were not up to par for you, or if they were. You know, and you guys are doing an amazing job. Thank you so much. Our next question is. How was your so we learned a little bit from Dominisha about her experience with other volunteers, but now I want to swing this question to Selena first, and then we can follow up with Nisha. How was your experience with other volunteers? Did you feel like you could be your true self around other volunteers?
Yeah. Definitely with other volunteers. I mean, I think I stopped talking to volunteers like after the year after me came. Um, yeah, so I made like, I mean, some of my best friends, like Bruno, for example, is like one of my best friends. So I definitely made like a core group of people that I absolutely love and adore and like support me through anything. Most Peace Corps volunteers were really open. And because I feel like we went through so many goddamn pre-service training that like anything you could feel like you need to talk about with a Peace Corps volunteer, like they would be open to it because like we already probably did a discussion on it. Like, I don't know. Like, yeah. So,
Did you feel like you can talk about any topic with almost all volunteers, or did you feel like you specifically stuck around with maybe a certain group of volunteers? Like you found
I
your
stuck in a group of volunteers that had Dominican friends. Like I stuck around the group that like integrated. I didn't stick around the group that was like, oh my God, I want a cheeseburger. It's like, girl, relax. So I think I stuck around like a certain group of people. I was very cliquey.
okay. Thank you very much. Nisha, I know you spoke a little bit about your relationship with the volunteers around you. You shared a little bit about dating, you know, a woman during service. I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more or get into a little bit more depth of maybe some of those experiences with other volunteers. Obviously, not all experiences are created equal, so we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to round it out if
Y-
you so choose to.
Yeah, so I would say I definitely found my people within the volunteers that like I could go to talk about anything and like not have like feel completely comfortable with them. But then also like with Peace Corps, like there's a lot of us and we come from like different walks of life. And so there are definitely people who like you would hear say some shit that is like problematic, like when it comes to race or when it comes to someone's sexual identity, that I definitely like kept at a distance, because I now know I see who they are. But for the most part, like I was able to find like my group of people who I could reach out to if I was like dealing with shit in my community, that I was having issues like navigating, as a dark skinned female. I also, and it was very limited, you know, there was a couple Black people in Peace Corps DR, while I was there at least. So it was limited, but I did have access to that, which I was very fortunate for.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I, I think whenever you find your group of people, like they're very like Peace Corps volunteers, I feel like a lot of them are quality people. And there's so many of us that I think at one point I just got like exhausted of like meeting so many people, because it was like, oh, where do you live? What's your project? This and that. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I only have so much energy. But like once I did meet those people that could support you in like all those different things that you need, girl, they were the best of friends. Like they were exactly who I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And many times.
Yeah, and I feel like, Peace Corps, you know, we get to be in our own spaces and do our projects and stuff, but like you guys said, there are a good amount of good quality humans that serve along with us. But Dominisha, you had mentioned, and if I could go back to the comment, you had mentioned that there were some some volunteers who may have, had conflicting or even racist remarks or sexist remarks or things like that. Did you ever feel like you had the space and the confianza to be able to maybe either confront these folks or maybe challenge them, or maybe if that didn't work, go to a Peace Corps staff member, or I don't know, like have some backup within the volunteer groups as well during those instances?
That's a very good question. So me personally, I did not have a lot of time for a lot of people in Peace Corps who maybe had opposing views as me. I would want to say, if I had wanted to come to someone about it, I don't know how that would have turned out. And I can also, I've heard experience of other people where those experiences were very challenging when they brought it up to people at Peace Corps DR. I do know that, you know, and these aren't my personal experience, so I want to be cautious when I speak on them. But I do know that incidents have occurred where Peace Corps has been asked to like look at themselves in the mirror, and I do recall that in those moments that they have listened and tried to take action. So I think it was the first time for my cohort that we had a diversity and inclusion committee. I think that was like maybe the first time that occurred. That could be wrong, but that's something that I think kind of helps with the climate. But then also, like, everywhere you go that has like a diversity and inclusion thing, it's all the people who like get it, and we're like preaching to the choir. But I do think that simple act of like trying to create a space for that. And then also we had like a hour or so during our pre-service training where we talked about like different things that our volunteers of color experience that maybe our white cohort or volunteers would not experience. So I say all that to say I didn't have any personal experience or the energy to like call someone out or to go to someone about what somebody else said or made me feel. But I have seen moments where Peace Corps had failed, or people in the Peace Corps had failed, and Peace Corps was called out and they tried to do something about it.
Thank you very much. Selena, I don't know if you wanted to maybe answer that same question about specifically, if you felt like the like like you had the space or the energy even to maybe not necessarily confront, but maybe challenge, or if you didn't, then maybe you had the confianza with somebody in Peace Corps, which you would share some of these things with, some of these incidents that may have happened, microaggressions or anything like that, that that they can resolve because it might be something that bigger within the organization.
I don't know. I'm not their educator, nor their therapist, nor like if you did not get it in 3 months of pre-service training, like you are not getting it. So Peace Corps volunteers that would say ignorant shit about Black people as well, they will always say that shit. I don't know, like they would say all kinds of stuff, and it's just like I don't have time for you. You know, that's why I kind of like was clicky because it's like, okay, I like you, you're all cool, not you, not you. Uh, um, you just run out of energy. And also, like, I had a lot of Dominican friends, so I'm like, I don't need to be here right now. Like, I speak Spanish, I'll be fine. You know, I don't need like I feel like a lot of people also needed like to speak in English. Like, I never needed to speak in English ever. Like, I could all the thoughts that I have, I can say in Spanish. So it was like I feel like a lot of Peace Corps volunteers did need to rely on that like Peace Corps group to like talk things out, but I never did ever. I never needed. So if I chose you to be my friends in like the Peace Corps group, it was because like you were. But no, I was not correcting nobody. I was not nobody's No, girl, no. For what? Okay, dime.
Awesome. Thank you to you both for answering those questions and letting me dive in a little bit more to some of these things. So my next question kind of falls in line with these last few questions that I've asked. And the reason why I wanted to dive in a little bit more is because our next question is, and Selena, you can answer this one first, is how did you create a sense of belonging in your service? And I know you spoke a little bit more about, integrating more with Dominican folks, but I don't know if there's anything else that maybe helped you create that sense of belonging for yourself during service.
Like in my site or just like in my service?
You can choose site, you can choose service, whatever you feel most comfortable with. You can speak on both as well.
I guess I never felt that I didn't belong in DR. Like a lot of people went through a culture shock when I got there. I had like a zero culture shock. People were like, "Oh my God, habichuelas," and I'm just like, "Girl, dame con." So I'm like, I feel like in DR I didn't really have that like sense of not belonging ever. In my site, now my site was a little bit different because they're like super religious and like I had to be like a different person there. So I feel like I did what everybody else did. Like I like in the 17 streets that were my site, there were like 12 churches. So like I went to like church every fucking day of the week. Um, I don't know, the way I integrated.
Yeah, it could be. Or like in service, it can be, how did you find your sense of belonging there? Like you spoke on a little bit that you
Okay, yeah,
thought.
that makes sense. My sense of belonging. So my sense of belonging was
Mhm.
creating a queer network in DR that like absolutely loves and adores me. So like for example, I got asked to be like on a trans panel in DR like a couple of days ago, and like I've left service like I don't know how many years ago, like 5 years ago. So I'm still like connected with all these people, and I still feel like I belong. I go back every single year, like a Dominican does, to like visit everybody. So I feel like my sense of belonging came from the queer community in DR, going to the Capitol, and people were like, "Oh, you just want to go to the party?" It's like, no, it's like these are the only queer people like we know. All we have is each other, and it's like this small of a circle. Um, yeah, I don't know if I answered the question.
No, you did, and that sense of belong, and that's something that maybe a lot of heteronormative and cisgendered folks may not understand necessarily the needs of like creating that community and finding that network of folks.
So I needed to find the queer people in DR. I needed that. And I needed to go to the Capitol. I needed that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you create a like queer people, we're really good at creating families that are not blood because we're just so used to being like thrown out and like, like our families doesn't accept us. Like they don't, we're very used to that. So whenever you have a queer person, they adopt you. And I was adopted because I was like yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Nisha, the same question would go to you. How did you create a sense of belonging during your service?
Um, I'd say first off, so my request though, we had our little meeting. Where would you like to, or like, do you have any requests on like where you would like to be placed, or like what you want your site to be like? And like, I was of course like, there's not much weight on like what I want, but I was like, I want to be like very far from everybody, and that is exactly what I got. It took me, so it's the trip to my site, and only a couple real ones made it to my site. I love the people that did, but like my sense of belonging, like I spent a lot of time alone, and unlike Selena, my ass showed up to the DR with a 2. I should have got a 1, but I didn't know any Spanish when I got there. So, and that was my motivation for like wanting to be alone or far away from other volunteers, so I wasn't depending on that, you know, like need to talk to someone because I get to talk in English with you. I don't have to think, my brain can relax. I didn't want that crutch. And so that really put me in a position to spend a lot of time by myself. And I'd say naturally, I don't like being alone, but those moments were very therapeutic for me because I got to really like be with myself. And then that also gave me the courage to, like, knowing myself, feeling comfortable with myself, gave me the courage to like branch out in my broken Spanish, and like making really like great connections with the people in my community. So I think like me being very humble in my humbled in my knowing that I cannot communicate as well as I want to, or as I'm used to in English, but then also like still having these very full experiences and connections with people, where there's such a strong barrier as language, but still feeling very connected with them. So yeah, my sense of belonging was, one, getting to know myself, being humbled, and like being able to start very basic connections or interactions with people, and for those to like over time just like grow and be like super fulfilling.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. And it's very important to highlight that you know, everybody's journeys in Peace Corps start differently, you know, with different language levels. Myself, like Selena, started off with a 10 in Peace Corps right off the bat. So, you know, it's that experience is different than somebody that comes in at a lower language level, for sure. And then finding your sense of belonging in all of that intersects within you is important. And thank you again for sharing that, Nisha. And so we talked a little bit about you know, folks that you interacted with in service, both folks in your site as well as folks in Peace Corps and staff in Peace Corps as well. Now I want to pose this question, and I want to start with Nisha. What did allyship, so specifically allyship, look like to you during service? It can be, you can share like a moment, an instant, you can share like something that's anybody in any one of those you know, different facets of your life did. It can be somebody from abroad, like that wasn't in Peace Corps, as well as volunteer staff and folks in your site, or Dominicans outside of site as well. So it's a very open question, but specifically surrounding allyship and what it looked like to you.
So yeah, I like this question because it made me think a little bit. So as like a person of color who experiences America, hopefully y'all all know what that means, and going to a place where a place that I want to be. I'm trying to be mindful with my words. I love the DR. I love the people I met there. But there are some racial tensions between Dominicans and Haitians. And so I felt myself being in a very interesting position to be a Black woman who normally has to defend myself or other Black people or other people of color. But then to see Dominicans, people of color, speaking of Haitians, the way I've heard people talk to, you know, people of color. So, and it not be directed towards me, or my color. So my color is different than the Haitian color in someone else's eyes. And I'm sorry that I'm like talking like this. But it being, for me to be an ally to a Haitian was a very perplexed thing for me, because them saying something about their color is not them talking about my color, or at least in my face, it wasn't that. So it was interesting to be defending someone who they were as a Black person, and it not be an attack on me as an African American. I think that was an interesting experience, to kind of be on the other side of the table. And then also be able to explain to some people of like why I found their words hurtful about how they talked about someone else who wasn't me. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, and it's completely up to you. What did allyship look like to you during your service? It could have been about you or your allyship towards somebody else as well. And I appreciate that, because a lot of times, during panels where we're trying to, we try to frame them around a specific part of somebody's identity, but this shows, how intersectional we are, and how different things can affect us, even though we may be identifying as one thing. There are still larger social issues that get to the heart of it, and ultimately are part of a very similar struggle as well.
And I think what I would want to say, what I wanted to say is that like my allyship looked like calling out someone who was my friend who maybe said something nasty about a Haitian when there was no Haitians in the room. Yes.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Nisha, for those comments. Selena, same question to you. What did allyship look like during your service? And again, it can be anybody like that you met during service, or you can also speak about folks outside of the Peace Corps circle that maybe showed your allyship during that time of service. But yes, the floor is open for you.
What does that mean, allyship? Allyship is like how people were allies to me, or like?
It can be how, so Nisha took it how, her perspective of allyship towards somebody else, specifically towards Haitian folks. You can take it as how folks were allies to you, or how you were allies to folks, or any in between that you can find there. But again, the question is open up to you as to what allyship, what did allyship look like to you during service?
Oh my God, like such a big question. Shit, I should have read the questions before.
If you want, we can tailor it to you specifically. So what did allyship look like to you in terms of like the folks that you were surrounding yourself with? How did they, show you allyship?
I can't think of like one time specifically of like, I mean, I feel like a lot of queer people had to, practice realness, and we're not in the streets, like you're not like being obviously queer for like a lot of safety reasons, but there's times when you're clockable. So like I remember one time actually with you, Bruno, we were at a bar, and then you asked me to dance bachata because you love to dance bachata. And then it was literally like a literal 2-step, not even the 4 count. And then it was like, you know, people kicked us out of the bar, and it was like, you can't be here, this and that. It was like 20 volunteers in there. And I don't always have the energy to stand up for myself. Like, I get tired of it. Like, now that I started transitioning, now I gotta write like all kinds of policies at work about trans people. I'm like, I'm exhausted. Like, I don't even understand myself. So sometimes you don't even want to fight. Like, you don't even want to do, like, you're just like, oh, I'm over it. So I was just like, that's fine. Didn't all those 20 people like get up and leave? And I was just like, y'all did that for me, you know? And it's not even just for me, it's like their cause, because they think of people like that they love or whatever. Other allyship that I could think that Peace Corps volunteers did, actually, like in the curriculum, there was like a safe zone type curriculum in one of our programs. And I always skipped that one because I didn't want to be clockable. I didn't want somebody to clock me. So I skipped it, and I thought allyship also from other volunteers was the fact that they still taught the safe zone, even though I didn't, you know? I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's all relevant, you know, it's all about how people showed up around you. It could be volunteers, it could be, you know, like other queer folk, Dominican queer folks who maybe supported you in navigating some of those spaces as well, you know, because it's different, you know, you explain your perspective coming from the US as opposed to, you know, getting to the DR, Peace Corps explaining certain things, and then, you know, folks that live there and experience it every day explaining some of those things as well. But yeah, thank you so much for your answer. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else.
I still don't know what the definition of allyship is, but that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, allyship is how people support you and how you can support people, how they can be an ally, even though they don't necessarily identify the same way that you do. They can still support you. You know, and sometimes allyship can do more harm than good. But
I
that's
know what you yeah. So I mean, I feel like there also is a line to allyship as well. I mean, I feel like now that I'm transitioning, people want to be like that savior, my savior, and sometimes it's not calling for that. So I feel like in DR, a lot of times, like people would do the most to like defend queer people as well. But like sometimes, even though I did talk about earlier how some people are like really unapologetic and stuff, some of us don't want to be clocked, mija. You know what I'm saying? Like if they use the wrong pronouns, this is not Portland, mija. Like don't be my pronoun, like let them be, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like sometimes you need to ask the person what allyship means to them. Like sometimes people are really unapologetic and they're like, yeah, my pronouns are this and I look like this, so what? And some people are like, whatever I look like is what it is. Once we get to a safe space, these are my pronouns. But I feel like sometimes allyship has put me in more harm than good. Because sometimes I can remember like this, I went to like this nail salon and, you know, I didn't have a wig on and my hair is barely growing and whatever. I didn't have no makeup on, and one of my friends was with us and they was using he, him pronouns. And I was just like, girl, pay it. There's a Dominican salon. There's a Dominican barbershop right next door. Like it's giving toxic masculinity. Like just pay it. Pay it means like pay it no mind. Girl, pay it. So he was like, oh no, that's she, her pronouns. Get it right. This and this and that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to get jumped outside this barbershop. So I feel like sometimes you got to know when to, I don't know. Yeah.
I hear you, Selena. That was a good point. I definitely hear you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you so much. And also, I know you shared a little bit, you know, outside of your service. All that is relevant as well. I mean, we're asking, you know, this is a RPCV panel, but obviously anything outside of Peace Corps as well is always relevant. So we, you know, we're also living in the moment and growing as we're speaking. So thank you so much for sharing that moment in your life. And on a personal note, I do remember that night, and I'm pretty sure we both cried when we left that bar. So, because we saw how many people walked out.
Oh yeah, I was like shook. I was like, oh my God, y'all really walked out? Like y'all don't want to stay here? Also, that bar is late, so like we should have left anyway.
Yeah. But thank you again. Okay, so one of the bigger questions that we have, these are going to be like the last two questions, and then we're going to open up the space a little bit later for folks here joining us to ask questions. But one of the big ones that we are asking is specifically for queer, trans, like QTB, IPOC, right? Like we're talking about big picture specifically for folks of color. How do you envision the future of Peace Corps moving forward in terms of inclusion? And I know this is kind of like a big question because there's some structural maybe issues with Peace Corps, within Peace Corps, and then there's also things, on a larger social scale that come with being a part of Peace Corps, throwing some concepts out into the air, the issue with white saviorism, American exceptionalism, so many different other approaches to it from a larger social perspective. And then how these intersections with QTBI POC folks, and how when we get here, we all kind of get lumped into a Peace Corps volunteer perspective. But how do you think, from your perspective, do you envision the future of Peace Corps moving forward? And it can be in any which direction that you choose to go in. But I think right now we're going to start with Nisha.
So yeah, that's a complex question. For me, and what keeps coming to mind is, I think one of the big things, one of the big objectives of Peace Corps is that exchange of the American culture or what have you with wherever we're going. And I think when it comes to a volunteer's sexual identity that is not cis or binary, Peace Corps volunteers are, I would say, encouraged to not present that in their community. And I do understand that, like, for someone's safety, that they do that for volunteer safety. And I definitely wouldn't want anyone to be put at risk otherwise. But I do think that we hide that aspect. Like I am African American, I am also queer, or I am this, that, and the other, and I'm also trans. Like that part does not transition with that, bringing our culture to that country, or that exchange that gets lost. And I think, we did talk a little bit about your physical safety and then other safety elements. Like, I think that gets lost behind or left behind a lot. And if they could think about that within themselves, that I think maybe that would be helpful.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nisha. And Selena, over to you. How do you envision the future of Peace Corps moving forward, with inclusion of QTBI POC?
Oh God, it's such a big question again. So I think the Peace Corps actually does a great job with inclusion of all those letters, in the sense that, like, everyone's queer in the Peace Corps, but everyone, and then if they're not queer, like, give it a 4th of July and some Barcelona, and like, you're just like, what happened? But anyway, so as far as, like, I don't want them to do too much. Like, honestly, like, okay, I appreciated the fact that they were real, the fact that they were like, you might not be able to come out in your sight. And I feel like at 20, like, I'm 31 now, at 23 was, I think, when I got to the islands, was like, bitch, like, you're coming from a 4-year American university, Like, if you're a Peace Corps volunteer, most of us are idealists. So most of us went to like panels about how we can change the world, and we recycle, and we don't use straws, and like all that stuff. And like, you get to I use these pronouns, and you tell everybody, and then you get to the island and you're like, whoa. So then you are presented with Peace Corps staff that's like, yo, mommy, like, you might be like a child molester in your site. You're offended. You're like, oh my gosh, Peace Corps is not inclusive of all these letters and all this stuff. And no, they're just being real. So I don't want Peace Corps to do too much, because it's like, you're already colonizing as it is. Like, the whole Peace Corps institution, you're just colonizing. And as idealistic as you are, if I could go back in time, I would not do Peace Corps. Because like, as idealistic as I was, as like, I want to do this and do that, no matter what you do, you are colonizing, period. There is no reason that Dominicans cannot move forward with their own Q issues, all that issues. Like, there is no reason the Peace Corps needs to be the forefront of like queer, like, I don't get that. So where do I envision the future of Peace Corps moving forward and the inclusion of these people? I mean, do whatever is around you. Like, if the DR or whatever site that you're at is including them, cool. If not, don't be the pioneer. It's not your place. You know? I'm also not a fan of the Peace Corps. Like, I would like to abolish the Peace Corps. Like, no matter what Peace Corps does, like, you're calling it, like, no matter what. So it's kind of like, oh, what should the Peace Corps do on this? Like, self-destruct. That's what it should do. And you do more good than harm, honestly. No shade.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, there's been so many different discussions around, especially, you know, post coronavirus, when, you know, they brought back a lot of folks from their sites before their service had ended, and it's possibly giving the opportunity of a fresh start, right? So, you know, there are a lot of conversations around, okay, what is Peace Corps doing more harm than good by intervening at all? You know, is it being sold as a aid agency versus, you know, a training opportunity, which, you know, when folks have put it in dollars and cents, it seems like the U.S. may be getting more on the end of professional development for folks than the Dominicans might be getting. And so there are all these questions floating around. And, you know, now aside from the inclusion of queer folks, and specifically queer folks of color, putting that a little bit aside, you know, just asking specifically about your service in general, and asking a little bit about, you know, what you think. So Selena, you had mentioned that you think abolishing Peace Corps would be the biggest thing, right? And so do you feel like, aside from your experiences with Dominican folks, do you feel like you may have or may have not gotten some of these opportunities outside of Peace Corps, like the experiences that you had?
You're saying that, say it again?
Like, do you feel like you said that if you would go back in time, you wouldn't necessarily go into
Peace Corps? I had the same opportunities?
Yeah. Do you feel like...
Oh, like, are you kidding me? Peace Corps on your resume is like golden. Everybody thinks like you're this like savior of like the universe. Like, I hate saying I was a Peace Corps volunteer, because like, whenever I'm at somewhere and I was like, yeah, I did Peace Corps, everyone's like, oh my God, like, thank you for your service. It's like, girl, shut up. Like, all I did was like go to that island, like get us a stipend to teach sex ed, and like a place that can teach itself sex ed. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I gained so much. Like, my Spanish was perfected. I made all these awesome friends. I like developed myself professionally. Then I got back to the States, got into every grad school that I applied to, and I only had like a 3.3 GPA. And then after that, like, Peace Corps was all people talked about in my interviews. Now, what did the people that took my sex ed classes do? Like, can they, like, they got a little certificate, like, can they turn that into a job? Like, can they turn that into coins? Like, they were working hard. Like, okay, we trained them to like train others. Like, girl, like if you're not providing jobs and coin, like what are you doing? So it's like, and then during all that stuff, like think of all the Peace Corps volunteers that cause more damage than good, like, and you know them. And like, yeah, can I think of like 3 to 4 Peace Corps volunteers that like completely transformed their site and was like fucking awesome? But read people's DOS statements. Like people did not do that shit. Like you read that shit, you're like, wow, look awesome on a resume. You didn't do that. So it's like, yeah, out of like 100 Peace Corps volunteers, maybe 3 did really cool shit. But like for the most part, you're like causing way more harm than good. What are the vision, the future? I don't know. Like I just don't like the Peace Corps. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. And then these are all like perfectly valid for all the experiences that you have and growing in general, that we've done outside of Peace Corps as well. Nisha, kind of like the same question that I had posed to Selena, you know, outside of just like queer folks of color, you know, what do you envision for the Peace Corps moving forward? And do you feel like maybe you would have gotten some of these same opportunities had Peace Corps not been around?
Yeah, I definitely think that my Peace Corps experience got my foot in the door at a lot of places. And like Selena mentioned, I was talking about Peace Corps in a lot of my interviews. And I left that country 2007 and like still in, or 2017. And, you know, in 2019, I'm still talking about the Peace Corps. And what I did. So like, yeah, I definitely think I left better. I definitely benefited more than the community that I went to. And I think a lot of volunteers would also echo the same thing.
And if they don't themselves, no shade.
And like, I think, so in college, it's similar to mission trips. Like I did mission trips in college and would never do them today. And the Peace Corps is the same exact thing. We go to this other country because we want to help. And really we're just going to make ourselves feel good about ourselves. And that's exactly what I did. And if I had the opportunity, I would still probably do it again because I've benefited that much from it. But similar to the Peace Corps, what I would say, like with the mission trips that I did, like fucking give them all those resources that got my flights there and back, my luggage, my dog back to the United States, my trips to the Capitol, like put all of that just in that community that you, or that country that you say you're wanting to help, because they don't need more people. They don't need someone showing them what to do. They need the resources. And I think that might be the answer: abolishment or giving them the resources, you know?
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you both so much. And like I said, there have been a lot of discussions around this specific topic, especially after folks have been volunteers that were in service were brought back to the U.S. due to the pandemic. You know, and it's a big question, and it's a question that, you know, a lot of folks, especially a lot of these struggles that we're talking about today, in terms of like why countries don't have resources and why it's so expensive to have, you know, like a transition, physical transition, and all these different, like they're part of very similar struggles, in the sense that, you know, funds and financialization of the world have reallocated some of these things. But I also want to make sure to thank you all, thank you both for answering all those questions and being real with us, and you know, not holding back. And that's something that we can all appreciate, to have some real conversations with amazing people. And like I said, you know, you two, you know, we served together, and it's been an honor being here in this space with you again. And I know we have some time for some questions. I think Lane wants to jump in real quick.
Wow. Dropping some bombs, y'all. I loved it. So there is one question from Valerie for y'all, and so it's two questions actually. So it says, now that you've returned, how do you interact with the returned Peace Corps volunteer community? Do you find it welcoming and
I don't
supportive?
interact with them. I feel embarrassed that I did the Peace Corps, no shade. So I feel embarrassed that I wasted that much money. I feel embarrassed that like I thought of myself as this white savior. So it's kind of like I made my friends that are returned Peace Corps volunteers, and that's it. I don't go to any RPCV functions. No, nothing. No.
Awesome, thank you. Dom, question, Nisha.
I would say there's definitely a select few people that I left Peace Corps with that I consider a friend, and those are the people that, you know, I've stayed connected with. And I mean, if Peace Corps wasn't a thing, I think we still would have met. I think like the stars would have still aligned for us. So yeah. What was the question?
The question was, now that you return, how do you interact with the RPCV community, if you interact with the RPCV community, and you find it welcoming and supportive?
Yeah, so yeah, I also thought, like, you know, when you were thinking about doing the Peace Corps, you go to all these like meet and greets, the booths at random places like in the library, just to like learn about people's Peace Corps experience. I thought I would be like that person when I came back, and I have not done a single thing. One thing that I have done is, like, if I'm looking for a job somewhere, I will reach out to Peace Corps people, because
Career, I'm like, la, 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 jobs are out there, la, 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 yeah, I love Peace Corps, this and this and that, like.
right. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much for answering those questions. And I get it, like, especially for folks who have been marginalized in the entire like history of the US, disenfranchised in many ways. You have to use the tools and resources available to you, because, you know, speaking frankly, a lot of times, you know, like folks of color don't necessarily have the luxury to come back and, you know, jump into I don't know, a cushy job, or, you know, a home necessarily sometimes. So, you know, folks of color really have to, sometimes they feel like, you know, they have to use whatever resources they have available. And if the Peace Corps is one of those resources, then, you know, you can take every little bit that you can. And we get it. I get it for sure. And I don't know if there are any other folks who have more questions for our amazing panelists. Please put them in the chat for us. I don't know. Okay, here's a question from Caitlin. Would you all consider ever talking about your experiences with PC trainees to the DR, like folks who are about to go into service with with the DR, or like a mentorship program, for example, folks who are maybe thinking about it and are trying to ask some of those questions? You know, would you consider some of that? And we can start with Nisha first.
Yeah, so I would say personally, I don't think I would, only because, you know, Peace Corps is designed in a way to where, you know, there's one cohort there for a year, and then there's another one entering. So I think that they can use their own volunteers to do that mentorship. I think that would be more beneficial, because I've checked out, and things could be significantly different from the time I was there to where those volunteers are right now. And so I think that would be the best setup, is to use the older volunteers to, if they want to participate in a mentorship program. something I might consider is to like talk with someone who is on their way out, and maybe kind of talk about my experiences on how I coped with coming back, looking for a job with, what did they give us, like $1,300, like our little stipend when we came back, looking for a job and trying to live on that change, after not having income for 2 years, or like income to sustain us coming back to America. That would be something I maybe would consider.
Awesome. Thank you, Nisha. Selena, would you consider talking about your experiences with PC trainings in the DR, or like possibly like a mentorship program?
No.
Okay.
No. Maybe if they're leaving, yeah. Like, how did you integrate back? How did you do this? How did you do that?
Yeah.
But during, absolutely not.
Okay. Interesting. Do you think that when you say, when you have like the opportunity, or like, I guess the question was presented in such a way where maybe there would be like a follow-up, would you feel like the same realness that we're bringing to this conversation, do you think that it would be valuable for folks that are serving or about to go into service to hear as well?
No. No, I feel like, I mean, if you're going to be in training, you kind of have to believe in the programs, and I don't believe in the programs.
Okay.
So I could be like, oh, like if I get there, I feel like I'd do more damage than good. I'd be like, oh, this is a waste of time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm thinking like, if I'm trying to put myself in that volunteer's shoes, and if someone who left 2-3
Came back and was
years,
jaded.
I would have been like, they probably got kicked out, or
Yeah, also,
like,
yeah, that's true. So like,
she didn't know Spanish.
yeah, so I
I'd
feel
be
like
like,
when
what's wrong with them? That's what I would be thinking.
So when I
Because I'm
did
about to
meet
go
some
save
jaded
some
people,
folks.
yeah, when I did meet some jaded people, we were kind of taught like something went wrong in their service. Nothing went wrong in my service. My service was fab. I had a fab 2 years. So like, whenever, like, I remember meeting some people that were just like this, like, I guess like disgruntled or whatever, they'd be like, oh, their project didn't go this way, they didn't integrate right. Bitch, I integrated right. I knew everybody. I was all over that island. I worked well with my partners. Like, it's just, I don't believe in the programs, period.
Got you.
So yeah, so I guess they would probably do that. They'd be like, something went wrong in her service for her to think this. She's jaded because this. I'm just against white saviorism.
Yeah. So, I mean, from a little bit of my understanding and hearing both of your perspectives, it kind of sounded like, in terms of trying to keep us physically safe as volunteers, you felt like they did a really good job at making you all aware of things that are going on. But Nisha, I heard a little bit more of like maybe some of that emotional support they didn't necessarily follow up on. Do you feel like there's something in general that maybe, you know, something very quickly, very, very light, or, you know, that could be tweaked very quickly to try to support some queer volunteers a little bit better? Other than, I know we had like a diversity and inclusion committee, which is something that I heard like a lot of Peace Corps countries didn't have the opportunity to have, because the DR was so geographically unique in that sense, where we can kind of, you know, we didn't have to travel all that long, as opposed to like folks in, for example, Peru, where you would have to travel like 18 hours to try to get to you know, a site. So I don't know if there's something small that we can tweak. I know we have a lot of folks from PCDR on staff in the call as well. So, you know, just to see if we can, you know, support in just a little way, other than like, obviously as a structure, I feel like both of you can agree that about like breaking some of these things down. But yeah, any small changes that you can see or envision right now?
Yeah, so what
Nisha.
comes to my mind first is, I don't know how Peace Corps DR has trained their medical staff, or if there's been any training with working with individuals that are gay, lesbian, trans, what have you. From my experience, I did not get that personally from going to see like the medical team. Or there's times where it was assumed that I was in a heterosexual sexual relationship. And then like little things of just like feeling uncomfortable with like, oh, why didn't you wear a condom? Oh, because my sexual partner is a woman. Or like there's definitely like a lot. We handed out condoms like it was lollipops, like that was cool, but like there was nothing for like those volunteers that like that were in a lesbian relationship. And that's just a little example or like an anecdote from my personal experiences. Like I don't know if they are doing any training specifically with the medical staff, and it's like I definitely understand like how you want to protect your volunteers when they go to their site, but like how am I protected when I'm coming into to see a doctor that you've hired?
That's true. I guess to piggyback off of that, I don't know if things have changed. Like I said, I left the island in like 5 years ago. I remember asking for prep and then they didn't want to give me prep. So I guess like that would be like one of my complaints. It's just like, why? So I don't know, like it's gone generic now. So I don't know if things are cheaper now or whatever, or if it was a cost issue or what, but it's the only thing.
Gotcha. Well, I want to thank you both again very much for sharing and being so candid with us. It is close to closing time. But again, like I said, I appreciate you both. We served together. It's been amazing to see you all here in this space. And I don't know if Lane wants to share some more words with us before we leave.
All right, y'all, coming at y'all with another mic drop. Thank y'all so much to Bruno, Nisha, and Selena. It was amazing and information that needed to be heard. I want to make an announcement. Selena, I had mentioned this to you earlier that I was going to make this announcement. So Selena is getting a facial feminization procedure, and the Colorful Life of RPCVs is actually going to be making a donation to her to build this.
Thank you.
It's
I've heard TikTok so much.
No, we are here to support our panelists as much as we can. So this is the least that we could do. We give you a spotlight, and then we support you the best way that we can. So hopefully within the next few days, you'll be getting that donation from us.
Thank you.
And
They're just I
um,
still don't have the funds for it yet.
can I put your Venmo and Cash App information in the chat so that
You can put it in the chat?
Yeah, so that people can make direct donations if they would like.
Okay.
Golden. And then while I'm doing that, I want to take a moment of silence again for all those families who have lost a family member, a queer trans family member to domestic violence or any form of violence. Take a moment of silence for the Black folks that have lost their lives to egregious anti-Black violence as well, and also acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land and that we need to acknowledge that we have that our home that we call home is not necessarily ours, but it is stolen. All right, y'all. The moment of silence is never long enough, but it's what we have to do to pay respects to those that have lost their lives before us in order to give us this opportunity to use our voices as our weapon. With that being said, thank y'all for attending, and thank you to the panelists again for saying powerful information that must be heard and needs to be continually said. With that, y'all have a great evening. It's been a pleasure.